The Galactic Council was in session, like every standard cycle. Representatives from over 70 spacefaring species filled the massive circular chamber, floating slightly in their gravity-adjusted chairs. Holoscreens blinked, translators hummed, and debates filled the air as usual. But then, silence. A human diplomat named Elias Ward, who had never missed a council session in 20 years, didn't show up. At first, the others thought it was a delay, maybe a transmission glitch. But the humans didn't respond. Not to messages, not to calls, not even automated systems. One by one, human embassies across planets went dark. Human trade stations powered down. Their satellites stopped broadcasting. Human ships vanished from scanners. And just like that, without war, without warning, without a single word, humanity disappeared. Some species laughed. The Varnic Empire said it was a bluff, a trick. The Kraloths believed it was a weakness in their species. Finally, the loud ones are gone, they said. But others, like the old Serari, felt something colder. They did not leave because they were weak, said Elder Roman. They left because they saw something we didn't. Days passed, then weeks. Still, no sign. Planets that depended on human trade began to struggle. Medicines from Earth, supplies from Mars, fusion batteries from Luna, all gone. Pirates took advantage of the chaos. Old tensions between empires began to rise again. The humans had always acted like strange glue, loud, funny, emotional, and chaotic. But somehow they kept the galaxy from falling apart. With them gone, small conflicts began to boil over. A border dispute between the Draxian Union and the Marn Volcae turned into a shooting war in just 5 days. Trade routes that used to be neutral turned into battlegrounds. There was no one left to mediate. Humanity had always been the peacemaker, the messenger, the one everyone secretly trusted. Now they were ghosts. On the edges of known space, scavenger ships found abandoned human stations. Some were still warm. Lights still flickered. Food was still fresh. It was like they had just stepped out for a moment. But there were no bodies, no signs of violence. Just empty rooms. In one abandoned station near the Twin Suns, a Serari scout found a single message scratched into a steel wall in English. "We warned you." It was unsigned. And chilling. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting, something that had only happened 3 times in 5 centuries. Species that once hated each other now sat in the same room, confused and nervous. Did we push them too far? One ambassador asked. Maybe it was the sanctions, said another, or the attack on Iridani Station. That was never fully explained. Fingers pointed. Accusations flew. Some suggested a secret human weapon. Others believed they were hiding, waiting. The truth was, no one knew what happened. And that's what scared them. Because if humanity was destroyed, there would be debris. Distress calls. Black boxes. But there was nothing. Not a single trace of struggle. It was like they had simply walked out of the galaxy. But why? Across the stars, rumors began to grow. Civilians on backwater planets said they saw human ships flying in strange formations, deeper into the dark zones of the galaxy, areas with no maps and ancient warnings. A freighter captain swore she saw a massive human fleet near the dead nebula, larger than anything the Council had ever authorized. Others believed humans had found something out there, something terrible, and left to face it alone. Or maybe something had come for them. The Council tried to keep control. Messages were sent to all species. Stay calm, stay united. Everything is under control. But the truth was clear. Without humans, the balance had shifted. The Xarn Dominions started moving troops near neutral territories. The Trellans refused to follow Council laws, claiming the humans had taken the soul of the galaxy with them. Riots broke out on mixed colonies. Supplies ran short. Many aliens had built their futures around human partnerships. Now they were struggling. On the planet Voral 9, a child asked his father, "Where did the humans go?" The father, a miner, looked up at the stars and said, "I don't know, but I don't think they're done with us." In the void beyond known space, where light rarely reached and silence was older than time, something stirred. A single ship, dark and massive, moved without sound. Inside, a woman in black armor stood before a screen showing news from the galaxy. Her name was Commander Sarah Griffin, a Deathworlder, one of the last humans trained for true war. She turned to her team, elite, silent, watching. "They're falling apart," she said quietly. "Just as we expected." Another officer spoke. "They still don't know why we left." She nodded. "And they won't. Not yet." Outside the ship, hundreds more emerged from behind moons, from within cloaked asteroids, from stations hidden in dead systems. An entire hidden fleet, waiting in the shadows. For now, back in the council, panic was rising. Some called for surrender, though no one was attacking them. Some begged to find the humans and bring them back. Others said it was too late. The Krog Collective made a bold statement. Humanity was always unstable. We should prepare to dominate now. The very next day, their communication network crashed. Their long-range scanners exploded. Their ambassador vanished. No one claimed responsibility. But a single message was found on their central console. "You were warned." It was unsigned, just like the others. Slowly, one by one, the empires began to realize a hard truth. Humanity wasn't gone. They were watching, waiting, silent. And when they returned, the galaxy would never be the same. Because maybe they hadn't left in fear. Maybe they left in fury. And maybe, just maybe, they were building something far more dangerous than war. A plan, a reckoning, or a future where they made the rules. And in the silence that followed, the stars themselves seemed to whisper what everyone feared to say out loud. Without humanity, nothing was holding the galaxy together anymore. The galaxy didn't collapse all at once. It cracked slowly, like glass under pressure. And every crack began with a whisper, "They're not coming back." For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council was struggling to keep the peace. Species who once followed the rules were now making their own. The Draxians cut off fuel supplies to their neighbors. The Kraloths pulled their fleets back, refusing to patrol shared borders. On some planets, aliens burned human-made tech, calling it cursed. On others, they clung to it like treasure. Without humans, fear spread faster than any war, because no one knew why they were gone, or if they were ever coming back. And fear always leads to fire. It started with a blockade. The Voran Trade Union seized a supply route that once passed through human-monitored space. They claimed it belonged to them now, but the Norix Collective disagreed. Words were exchanged, then shots. 3 freighters exploded. Hundreds died. The Council issued warnings, but warnings were wind without Earth's voice to back them. The Council had power. Humanity had influence. There was a difference, and everyone felt it now. On the desert moon of Cora X7, a small research colony sent out a distress call. Pirates had attacked. Before, any call like that would bring a human patrol ship within hours. This time, no one came. The pirates looted everything, killed many, and left the rest to die in the dust. The colony's last message was bitter. This wouldn't have happened if the humans were still watching. Velix, a Trillon smuggler with a sharp mind and sharper instincts, had been watching too. He had traveled through many sectors, selling rare items and gathering secrets. But lately, his cargo wasn't crates. It was questions. Everyone wanted to know. Where are the humans? What did they see? Why did they vanish without war? One night, while repairing his ship in orbit above a broken relay station, he intercepted a strange transmission. It wasn't addressed to anyone. It repeated in low human voice, "We left because they would not listen. But we will return when the silence turns to screams." Velix played the message 10 times. It wasn't a warning. It was a promise. He set course for the edge of known space, the Black Veil. No maps, No signals, only rumors. The last area where human ships were seen. As he crossed into the veil, space itself felt colder, empty, dead, but not lifeless. Something was out there, watching. Velix found the wreck of a Krog warship drifting with no signs of battle. No holes, no damage. But the crew was gone. All of them. Weapons untouched. Air still breathable. But not a soul aboard. Just a single word carved into the captain's chair. Enough. Velix turned back, heart racing. The Deathworlders weren't gone. They were in the shadows. Meanwhile, the galaxy kept breaking. The Xarn Dominion declared war on its old rivals. The Draxians began forcefully annexing border planets. Refugees flooded peaceful systems, bringing stories of burning cities, warlords, and growing chaos. The Council begged for order. But without the human fleet, they had no way to enforce anything. Their warnings were now just empty sounds in a collapsing room. Some empires tried to build their own alliances, forming coalitions to mimic what Earth once kept together. But without the human diplomats, who had mastered the art of peace, they failed. Arguments turned to threats. Threats turned to fire. On planet Dovari Prime, a temple keeper named Luren uncovered something ancient, an old Earth artifact, a digital book of history. He played its final pages. It was a speech from a human general during the peace accords. The stars are beautiful, but they are cruel. Peace is not natural. It must be protected, not just with weapons, but with courage, with sacrifice, with unity. If we leave, not even the stars will keep you safe. Luren looked up at the night sky. It no longer felt peaceful. It felt like a loaded weapon waiting to fire. Back in the depths of the Black Veil, a single human ship moved through the dark, unseen. Its hull was blacker than space. Inside, the crew worked in silence, monitoring hundreds of live feeds from across the galaxy. Wars, riots, speeches, executions. Sarah Griffin stood at the center of the command bridge. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned like ice. She wasn't surprised. She was ready. They thought they could replace us, she said. They thought the galaxy would be fine. Her second in command, Marcus Kane, stepped beside her. It's only been 6 weeks. They're already eating each other. Sarah didn't smile. We gave them everything. Peace, protection, a future. And they threw it away. Marcus looked at the screens again. Do we move? Sarah shook her head. Not yet. Let it break a little more. Let them feel what it's like when no one is watching. Outside their ship, more vessels began to decloak. Hundreds, maybe more. Hidden fleets, ghost squadrons, deep space stations now alive with light. The humans hadn't vanished. They had simply stepped back to see what the galaxy would do without them. And the galaxy was failing the test. Back on the Council world, another emergency session was called. The seats were half empty. Some species had already left. Others didn't trust each other enough to sit in the same room. One old ambassador finally stood and spoke. We always mocked the humans. We laughed at their emotions. We rolled our eyes at their optimism. But maybe that was their strength. Maybe they believed in something bigger than themselves. Maybe that's why they held us together. His words were met with silence. A silence that grew heavier with each passing day. Then the first real signal came. A message, encrypted with old Earth code, reached the Council. It read only, "There is still time to change, but the clock is ticking." There was no sender, no trace, just the message. Some said it was fake. Others said it was a sign of hope. But no one could deny it anymore. Humanity hadn't disappeared. They had withdrawn. And if they returned, they wouldn't return as diplomats. They would return as judges. And in the far dark corners of space, every species, young or ancient, began to ask the same question. What happens when the ones who kept us safe come back and see what we've done? The shattering had begun. The galaxy was changing, piece by piece, planet by planet. The dust of old alliances settled in the wake of humanity's absence, and with each passing day, the stars felt a little colder. The Council's voice had lost its strength, unable to keep the peace it once guaranteed. The greater powers, those who were once so dependent on human intervention, were unraveling faster than they had ever imagined. And yet, as they stumbled, the silence from the human fleet grew louder. Velex, the Trillon smuggler, had found the edge of known space, and with it, something none of the galaxy's leaders had anticipated. A human message. A warning. He hadn't been the only one to hear it. Pirates and smugglers who roamed the fringes of known space also reported strange transmissions, ones that carried no sender, only an eerie message. It's not over. Not yet. This time, it wasn't just fear. It was uncertainty, growing into something far more dangerous. People began to ask, were the humans waiting for something? Were they waiting for the galaxy to destroy itself? Velex couldn't ignore the pull of the message. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became. The humans hadn't just vanished. They had withdrawn. Somewhere, out beyond the borders of every map, they had retreated to a place where no one could reach them, not even the most skilled spies or the deepest scanners. His ship moved through the galaxy with a new purpose. This wasn't just about profit or secrets anymore. Velex's mind was on one thing: finding the truth about what humanity had left behind. Weeks later, Velex arrived at a system known only as the Dark Halo. It was a place no one had ever explored. Not even the Council, with all its power, had ventured into the thick nebula that clouded the system. The region had once been called forbidden, and for good reason. The stars here didn't shine brightly, and the planets were dead. The very gravity in the space seemed to hum with a strange, unseen force. And yet it was here that Velex found his first sign: a human ship, or rather, what was left of it. The vessel was large, far bigger than anything he had ever seen in any human fleet. It was black, darker than the space surrounding it, and it floated without any energy output. No signals, no life signs, nothing. Just darkness. He docked his ship to the cold, lifeless hulk, his breath shallow as he stepped onto the deck. The air was stale, almost frozen. The interior was immaculate, as if the ship had never been touched by time. He moved deeper into the ship, his footsteps echoing on the metal floor. The hallways were empty, devoid of any signs of life. It was eerie. No crew, no equipment, no weapons, just long, endless corridors that seemed to stretch into infinity. And then, in the heart of the ship, he found it. A single room, locked away behind a set of steel doors that resisted all attempts to open them. After several minutes of hacking into the system, the doors finally slid open with a loud hiss, revealing the circular chamber. In the center, a massive structure stood, something he had only ever heard of in ancient myths. It was a flame, a device that appeared to be both alive and mechanical. The flame flickered softly, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Its energy output was impossible to measure. It wasn't a weapon, but something else, something more ancient, more powerful. And yet, it was human. It hummed with the kind of energy only a species like humanity could create. Velex stood still, mesmerized. The flame was humanity's secret, the thing they had kept hidden for generations. He had no idea what it was truly capable of, but one thing was certain: it was the key to everything. Humanity hadn't abandoned the galaxy. They had retreated, yes, but they were waiting for something. And that something was linked to the flame. His mind raced as he ran through possible scenarios. Could the flame be a weapon? Could it be the reason humanity had disappeared? No, it wasn't a weapon. It felt too ancient, too pure for destruction. This wasn't the kind of device that destroyed. It was the kind of device that protected. Velex had uncovered something that humanity had left behind, something far more powerful than anyone could have guessed. It wasn't about saving the galaxy anymore. It was about something deeper. But before he could understand more, an alarm blared throughout the ship. His systems screamed at him, telling him that something was approaching. Fast, the flame pulsed, and the ship's corridors began to shimmer with energy, as if the very walls were alive. Velix turned and sprinted back to his ship, the cold dread settling in his stomach. Whatever had been waiting in the dark halo had been triggered by his presence. And now, something was coming for him. His ship's engines roared to life as he blasted away from the ship, racing through the thick cloud of the nebula, desperate to escape. But the feeling of being watched never left him. There was something hunting him, something beyond the edge of space and time. The flame was a warning, and he had unwittingly awakened it. In the council chambers, panic was beginning to rise once again. Word of Velix's discovery spread quickly, and with it, rumors. The humans had not left because they were afraid. No, they had left because they had a plan that now seemed to be taking shape in the form of something ancient, something powerful. And as each species in the galaxy tried to maintain control over their own territories, the growing uncertainty about humanity's true power grew stronger. What would happen if the flame was activated? Back in the Black Veil, Commander Sarah Griffin stood silently before a view screen, watching the galaxy swirl before her. She had known it would come to this. Humanity's departure was not an abandonment. It was a test of the galaxy's strength, its resolve, its unity. They had given everyone the chance to prove they could manage the peace. Now it was time for humanity to return, not as diplomats, not as soldiers, but as something far more powerful. The flame was humanity's gift, and it was not meant to be a tool for war. It was meant to be something far greater, a symbol of what humanity was capable of when pushed to their limits. And now, the galaxy would know. They would feel the weight of their own mistakes, of their failures, and when the flame was fully activated, the galaxy would understand why the humans had left. Because when humanity returned, they would not be the ones begging for peace. No, humanity would return as the guardians of a galaxy broken by its own greed and fear, and the very stars would tremble under their gaze. The galaxy had changed. Entire civilizations now shifted like restless shadows, their foundations rattled by the growing uncertainty that humanity's disappearance had caused. Some feared the worst, that the Deathworlders, the humans, would return not as saviors, but as judges. And the closer they got to the truth, the more everyone realized that the galaxy had underestimated the power humanity had hidden away for centuries. Sarah Griffin, commander of the human fleet that was no longer visible, stared out into the cold blackness of space. The flame had been activated. A low hum filled the ship, and for the first time in a long while, Sarah allowed herself a moment of peace. It wasn't that she didn't have a plan. She did. She had always had a plan. But the true purpose of the flame was still a mystery, even to her. She wasn't sure if it was meant to save the galaxy or wipe it clean. But one thing was certain. Humanity had given the galaxy the chance to fix itself. And it hadn't. Now, the reckoning was close. The human fleet, scattered across the edges of the galaxy, had watched as each species fell into chaos. The Draxian Empire had gone rogue, attacking the Kralofts without warning. The Kralofts retaliated with full force. The Hadriv Dominion pulled back their forces, and the Xarn Dominion claimed everything in sight. Without the stabilizing hand of humanity, the galaxy had become a place of war and fear. It was like a ship without a captain, lost in the darkness, waiting for the inevitable crash. Velix, the smuggler, had narrowly escaped the Black Veil. The feeling of being hunted was still fresh in his mind. As he crossed into more familiar space, he couldn't shake the sense of something following him. Something old. He had thought he was alone in his discovery of the flame, but he was wrong. There were others who knew about it, others who had seen the warning signs. Velix wasn't the only one who had encountered the mysterious human ship. A group of mercenaries, hired by a powerful faction within the council, had ventured into the Black Veil as well. But their journey had been far more tragic. The mercenary ships had been found floating in the nebula, each one empty, stripped of their crew, and no sign of how they had disappeared. No signals, no wreckage, just cold, lifeless ships drifting like ghosts. Word of these events spread quickly, and fear began to grow. The story spread like wildfire. Human ships were out there, somewhere in the depths of space, watching. No one knew when they would return, but when they did, they would come with the full force of humanity's power. The question was no longer if they would return, but when. And what would happen when they did? Across the galaxy, the leaders of various species gathered in secret. The Council had called for an emergency session, hoping to address the growing fear. But the Council, once a symbol of unity, was now divided. The Draxians wanted to seize power, and the Kraloths wanted revenge. The Xarn Dominion saw the human absence as a chance to expand their borders, and the Hadriv Dominion simply wanted control. Everyone was scrambling to secure their piece of the galaxy before the humans came back to claim it all. One of the most influential members of the Council, Ambassador Frelon of the Teldari species, stood up in the emergency meeting. His species had always been neutral, always cautious, but his voice trembled as he addressed the room. If we don't act now, if we don't prepare. He paused, glancing at the others. When the humans return, it may be too late. We've seen what they're capable of. They were the peacekeepers, the stabilizers of our galaxy. Without them, we're nothing. His words were met with silence, but it wasn't the silence of agreement. It was the silence of dread. And Frelon could see it. The other leaders were scared. Not of the humans, not of their technology, but of what they might do once they realized how broken the galaxy had become. Velex, far away from the Council's deliberations, felt that same fear. He knew humanity had the power to return, to reset the galaxy if they wanted to. He also knew that humanity wasn't interested in conquest. The flame wasn't a weapon, it was a tool. But what was it meant to do? Was it truly meant to cleanse the galaxy of its corruption, or was it simply a key to unlocking a new future? He didn't know, but he couldn't ignore the feeling that whatever was coming would change everything. Sarah Griffin's thoughts mirrored his. The flame was her last hope, and the last test of humanity's ideals. It was humanity's gift to the galaxy, but it was also humanity's final judgment. She had given the galaxy time. She had given them hope. But now, the flame was ready, and it was time to act. The ships began to move. Out of the shadows, from the farthest reaches of space, the fleet emerged. The Deathworlders, the humans, were coming. The first signals came as whispers, soft and barely detectable. A fleet of sleek, dark ships crossed into known space, their presence unnoticed at first. They were not the massive dreadnoughts or warships that the galaxy had feared. No, these ships were smaller, faster, and deadly. There was something ancient in their design, something that reminded the galaxy's oldest species of a time when war was the only language known. These ships were ghosts, silent, unseen, and unstoppable. And then, from every corner of the galaxy, the signal came. The time has come. We are watching. You have failed. The Council's chambers erupted into chaos. The Teldari ambassador slammed his fist on the table. "They're here," he cried. The room fell silent again. And this time, the silence wasn't filled with dread. It was filled with realization. The humans had returned, but they weren't coming to offer peace. They weren't coming to negotiate. They were coming to reclaim what was theirs, to remind the galaxy that there was no future without humanity. Sarah Griffin's voice echoed in the minds of those who had once fought alongside humanity. This is your final chance. Step aside, or face the consequences. The galaxy had become a battlefield, and in the center of it all stood humanity, the Deathworlders, waiting for the galaxy to make its move. It would be a test of survival, a test of strength, and above all, a test of whether the galaxy could accept what humanity had always believed, that peace was not a gift, but a responsibility. The galaxy trembled as humanity's fleet, sleek and mysterious, moved closer to the heart of the known universe. Each ship, each vessel, was a symbol of humanity's power, their presence sending ripples of fear and awe across the stars. The flame, their final gift, now pulsed with a strange, unstoppable energy. It was no longer just a tool. It was the spark that would ignite the galaxy's fate. In the council chambers, leaders of every species were at a loss. They had watched as their own powers weakened, their empires fractured, their forces scattered. Now, with humanity's return, they understood the depth of their own failure. The humans had left, but they hadn't abandoned the galaxy. No, they had waited. They had observed. They had given the galaxy a chance to prove itself, and it had failed. Ambassador Frillon, the Teldari, stood before the council, his voice shaky. "It is too late. They're coming for us." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. The entire room knew it. The humans had given their warning, and now they were here to enforce it. On the bridge of the Black Veil, Sarah Griffin stood still, watching as the stars in front of her slowly shifted into focus. The flame's power was growing stronger. Every passing second brought them closer to the moment when the galaxy would finally realize the true reason humanity had been absent. It wasn't just a retreat. It was a test. The humans had given the galaxy everything: peace, diplomacy, guidance, and the galaxy had squandered it all. It was time for humanity to show them what they had left behind. The transmission from Sarah's ship went live across all systems. "This is Commander Sarah Griffin of the human fleet." Her voice echoed in every corner of the galaxy. "You have failed. You have broken everything we built. And now, you will understand why humanity was the foundation of this galaxy. The flame is not a weapon. It is not a tool of destruction. It is the power to create, to restore, and to cleanse. And it is now in our hands." The galaxy's leaders scrambled to respond, but their communications were blocked, overridden by the human signal. The flame had begun its work. Across the galaxy, energy fields shifted. Old battleships powered up with a force that shook entire planets. Space stations hummed with power as if they had been waiting for this moment. Ships that had been idle for years now moved, their engines roaring to life, as if they had a purpose again. And then, from deep within the human fleet, a burst of light, a pulse of energy so bright it lit up the entire galaxy. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't a blast of destruction. No, it was something more. The flame activated. Every planet in the galaxy felt it. The energy surged through the atmosphere, through the very core of each star. It wasn't destructive, but it was relentless. Systems that had been on the brink of collapse began to stabilize. Old empires that had long since crumbled started to rebuild themselves. Humanity's influence, felt for centuries, was now returning to hold the galaxy together again. The leaders of the council watched, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. Their once great civilizations were now being pulled back from the brink, restored by a power they hadn't understood. It was a power only humanity could wield. The flame was both a gift and a warning. The Teldari ambassador, now trembling, whispered to himself, "They were the glue. They always were." And then came the inevitable realization. Humanity was not here to conquer. They were here to restore. To remind the galaxy that peace had never been an accident, that the reason the galaxy had functioned in harmony was because of one species, the humans. Without them, there was nothing to hold the fragile balance together. But even as the galaxy began to settle, there was an undercurrent of fear. What would humanity do next? Would they enforce their will, demand control, take back everything they once had? The question loomed, and even as the galaxy's systems hummed with new energy, uncertainty spread like wildfire. On the bridge of the Black Veil, Sarah Griffin's voice echoed again. "We gave you peace," she said, the calmness of her words belying the power behind them. "We offered you a future together, and you failed. But you will not be left to destroy yourselves. We are here to rebuild. And if you choose to fight us now, if you choose war, You will face the consequences of your arrogance. The humans, once the quiet protectors of peace, had become the galaxy's last hope. But they were no longer the diplomats and ambassadors they had been. They were the reckoning. The flame had given them the power to reshape the galaxy, and they were not about to let it slip through their fingers. In the far reaches of the galaxy, the Draxian fleet had gathered. Their warships, bristling with weapons, were preparing for a final assault. They believed that the humans' return was a challenge. They didn't see the warning. They didn't understand the true purpose of the flame. The moment the Draxian ships entered human-controlled space, the Black Veil activated its weapons. But these weren't traditional weapons. No, these were the constructs of the flame. Energy surged outward, not to destroy, but to overwhelm. The Draxian ships tried to retaliate, but their weapons fizzled out, their systems crashing under the weight of the flame's energy. Sarah Griffin watched from the bridge as the Draxian fleet faltered. It wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. Humanity wasn't fighting for power. They were fighting for balance. And the Draxians were learning the hard way that they had made the wrong choice. The message was clear. This is not your galaxy to destroy. As the Draxian fleet turned to flee, the rest of the galaxy watched in stunned silence. The humans had returned, and they weren't interested in power, not in the way the other species had understood it. No, humanity had come back to ensure the survival of everything, to repair the fabric of a galaxy that had been torn apart by its own greed. And as the flame's energy rippled outward, there was a sense of inevitability. The galaxy had been given one final chance to rise. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors, but as guardians. Guardians who had been there before, who had once held the galaxy together, and now once again would do so. The reckoning had come, and the galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy had survived its darkest hour. And humanity, the Deepworlders, the ones feared for their temper and their strength, had once again become the protectors. They were the glue that held it all together. The stars flickered brightly in the distance, their light steady once more. But now, the galaxy knew. The flame that had once burned brightest was no longer just a light. It was a force that would never let the galaxy forget who had been its true foundation.